Mogul Motivation, empowering and inspiring entrepreneurs and dream chasers worldwide, 1 week at a time. Presented by True Stories Media. And I'm your host, Antoine Twiz Taylor. In this episode of Aspire Higher, I'll talk with Dr. Mysti Harrison. And like many people in her category, Black people who go into the medicine field, she didn't have any immediate representation or examples in her family or community. But she set a goal for herself that she indeed wanted to be a doctor, and she decided to see it through no matter what. Here's a brief insight into her journey. All right. So, Mysti, at what point did you decide that you wanted to go into the medical field?
So I think I always kind of thought it was one of my career options when I was growing up. I really liked, science as a kid, and then growing up having a few influences and different illnesses pop up in my family. I was very intrigued. I participated in this program that let high school students go to the medical center that was across from my high school and participate in like basic science research. So that was also eye-opening and something that I, really was like, okay, I could probably do this. I could see myself like working in the hospital. And then it wasn't like I thought about it in college, and that was definitely one of the, career options that I put at the forefront. But then in college, I got introduced to public health as well.
Okay.
And so I was thinking, I could do this or become a doctor. So when I graduated college, I wasn't really sure that I actually wanted to go to med school. And so I did a master's program, and it kind of reaffirmed that I did want to go to medical school. And so after my master's program is when I applied to med school and said, I'm just going to go for it.
So it seems like it was an interest for you for a while, because like in high school, and where did you go to high school?
I went to Murrah High School in Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi. Okay, so it seems like ever since like the high school years, you had an interest in, the medical field, but it wasn't like one of those things where it was like, yeah, this is what I want. It wasn't like a confirmation or definite yes yet. It took you some years to finally, comb through and filter through your options and say, you know what, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was definitely like my top career choice, but I wasn't for sure that I like had what it took, per se to do exactly what is required to get through medical school.
And why is that though? If you don't mind me asking, like, why did you think that you didn't have it? Is it because you didn't know any doctors in your family or community, or did you know any?
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't know any doctors in my family for sure. At least my immediate family.
Yeah.
Because my great grandparents, they didn't, go to college, barely graduated high school. My grandparents, graduated high school but didn't go to college. So my mom and my dad were like the first people that I knew that had completed, college. And so neither of them, were interested in the sciences and doing anything like that. So it was just like a lack of exposure, and I didn't know any Black doctors. So that was also kind of like one of the bigger reasons that I chose to college to go to for undergrad, just because I knew that they had a good reputation for putting out Black doctors and Black, lawyers.
Okay. So yeah, that's usually like a crutch that a lot of Black professionals have, is because a lot of times it's hard for people to be something they haven't seen. It's kind of like scary, like going into outer space. You're just in the darkness, right? Like a black hole.
Yep.
You didn't know any doctors in your immediate family. Most people in your immediate family didn't even step foot on a college campus. And it's crazy how like this story is so universal across the Black community, right? But it usually just, all it takes is just that one mustard seed leap of faith, and you can get propelled into the career that you're destined for. You made the decision to go into medical school after grad school, you said, right? What did you study in grad school?
So actually the program that I did in grad school, it was a medical sciences program. And so the program that was offered at Mississippi College, which is where I went to grad school, They offered kind of like medical school like courses. And so I figured, well, if I can buckle down, study for these and do well in these, then if this is similar to medical school, then maybe I can do medical school.
Hmm.
And so that's exactly what I did. And the program was great. I did well in it. And so that's kind of what gave me the confidence to apply to med school.
And what med school did you go to?
The University of Mississippi.
University of Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And when you went to med school, tell us about your experience there.
So yeah, I was one of, I guess, 10 people in my medical school class, 10 Black people in my medical school class. And the class was maybe like 130 to 140 people. Just to let you know, kind of like how outnumbered Black people were. And so, you know, when I got into med school, that's kind of when I realized that the odds were kind of already stacked against me just by sheer numbers. Coming from a family who had no one in medicine, and then, you know, a lot of my classmates, they had, you know, family and like direct parents that were doctors who could give them the advice or resources that they needed to succeed. And so me knowing that and being aware of that was eye-opening. And so I just realized that I, you know, couldn't take this for granted, which meant like sacrificing, missing things like birthdays, family events, just so I could study harder to make sure that I got where I needed to be.
Yeah.
So I think that was that realization, just making sure that I stayed on top of things, knowing that I was already at a disadvantage, was kind of how I got through medical school.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine how overwhelming it could be. I mean, just 10 Black students out of a class of 100 plus. You know, it's like we're all raised a minority anyway, though, right? You know, no matter what space we are in, most of the time. But wow, just 10?
So, like, I know in the classes before me, there were like around the same number or more that started, but that's not everyone that finished, you know? So also being cognizant of that was eye-opening.
How many finished in your class?
So I think there were 11 that started with me. And then we ended up finishing with 10 just because like some people moved into different classes. Some of the people above us moved into our class. Some of the people in my class moved to other classes, or some people just didn't finish at all.
Okay. So while you're in medical school, is this the time in a med student's journey, a doctor's journey, where you start to figure out what discipline of medicine you want to focus on? Is that at that point, is that when this happens?
Yeah, exactly. Or unless you have been exposed to, you know, everything early on, most people, at least from my knowledge, don't go into med school knowing exactly what they want to do, or at least I didn't. I was happy to just, you know, do anything. And so I kind of learned what I wanted to go into just basically from the classes and the subjects that I was most interested in learning about. And then also from the clinical clerkships that you do, where you go on different rotations in different departments. And so that's kind of when I realized I really like the brain. And so I was considering psychiatry and neurology, and so ended up doing neurology.
Nice. So tell us about neurology. What was so fascinating about the brain that sucked you in?
I mean, it's just difficult to explain. So the brain is kind of like a cool puzzle trying to figure out. So basically, it's like the only subspecialty where someone can come in, give you the symptoms that they're having, and you do an exam and can kind of like what we call it is localizing the lesion. You can try to figure out like exactly where they have like a problem in the brain just based off of the symptoms they're telling you and what the physical exam looks like. And so also disclaimer, my mom was diagnosed with a neurologic condition when I was in high school. So that was also something that I was exposed to. So, you know, having that going in and, you know, having that experience as being like a kid of someone who's having to see neurologists was also kind of an influence for me.
Yeah, that's a huge influence. You know, and it kind of, so it brings me back to, you know, when you was in high school and you went to those field trips or the tours of that medical center that you spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that was just paired with the struggles and the condition that your mom was going through. It kind of seems like that was the spark that pushed you into not just the medicine field but neurology as a whole. Is am I right? It's kind of like in the back of your head, something in your mind said, you know what, I want to tackle this problem.
Yeah, for sure. And like, going through it, I try to be open-minded and say, this is not, just because this is what I've been exposed to doesn't mean this is what I want to do exactly. But
Uh-huh.
as I went through medical school, I realized, that was a very big influence and it was something that I was most interested in learning about. So for sure that was definitely like a spark.
Mm. Yeah. Is neurology like are there many sub disciplines within neurology, or is it like a one shoe fits all type of area?
Oh, there's so many different subspecialties within neurology.
Mm-hmm.
So I am at a pretty big academic medical center, and so there's at least like 7 or 8 that I can name off the top of my head. And I happen to be going into a fellowship next year, and the fellowship is strictly just multiple sclerosis and neuroimmunology. So learning how the immune system interacts with the brain and the nervous system.
And where will you be doing your fellowship at?
I'll be doing my fellowship in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins.
What is the relationship between the brain and the immune system?
So to kind of understand that, you have to understand what the immune system does primarily. So the immune system has cells that kind of go around the body and provide surveillance and looking for things that are foreign to our bodies, things like bacteria or viruses. And so the immune system has cells that attack these things that are foreign. But sometimes the immune system can get confused and mistakenly identify different parts of the body that are actually not foreign and
Mm.
attack the normal cells in the body. So that would cause an autoimmune disorder. And so when your immune system launches an attack against the normal nervous system tissue, like the brain or spinal cord, for example, this would be classified as, a neuroimmunologic disorder. And that's kind of how they interact as far as creating things like multiple sclerosis, where the immune cells attack the normal myelin in the brain and spinal cord.
And how does that impact the mental health of an individual?
Yeah, so specifically for multiple sclerosis, which is the condition that is the biggest thing in neuroimmunology, people who have conditions where their immune system is attacking their brain can be left with things like physical deficits. And what by that I mean things like, numbness, tingling on one side of the body or the other, or, inability to walk, inability to move,
Mm-hmm.
arms and legs very well. And so for someone who was pretty active in, this condition usually gets diagnosed when people are young, like 20s to 40s, kind of when you're in your prime. And so being left with, those kind of disabilities so young affects people in so many ways. People, just by sheer nature get depression as a comorbid condition with a diagnosis like that, or pretty much any other neurologic diagnosis, because the brain is not as healthy as like a normal person. So we see a lot of depression with that as well, and so
Mm.
usually you'll find that people are often on antidepressants with a diagnosis such as multiple sclerosis. But it's not to say that people can't do that they want to do. It's just acknowledging that this is something that is happening to you. That is not necessarily happening to everyone else, and we want to kind of like support you through it, And also, we realize that this is not a very easy thing to deal with. Because if you told me, right now I was going to get diagnosed with the condition where I'd have to be put on, medications for the rest of my life to control the amount of disability that I get, I would definitely, have some thoughts about it and be depressed as well.
Yeah. Has there been a lot of progress in regards to figuring out ways to prevent it before it start? Has that been a breakthrough at all, or no?
So no,
Yeah.
you can't really predict who is going to get it. Like there's a lot of different studies that are kind of like trying to show associations between like who's more likely to get it, but honestly, we don't know.
Yeah.
So there's different studies that show that the latitude that you live at is a factor of people who live in the north or more cold areas are more prone to get it because they're exposed to less sun. So vitamin D has also been shown to play some role in it, but no one really knows why exactly people get it.
You just mentioned something interesting, and it just sparked a thought because someone I know, they live in a cold state. They live here in the Midwest, and they just purchased a home in California. And he said the main reason he did it was because his wife is battling multiple sclerosis. Hope I said it right. She's battling that. And, he said that's why he bought a home in California because, he wanted to get her out of those brutal winters. Mm-hmm. So what you just said, it made everything make sense now. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why, cause I didn't fully understand, and I didn't want to be too invasive or ask too many questions about why that is. But maybe you can expound. So the cold weather literally intensifies this type of thing.
Not necessarily intensifies it, but yeah, it can be most definitely uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So people that have multiple sclerosis or any other autoimmune illness have the ability to develop what we call something called Raynaud's phenomena in cold weather, where basically your fingers turn different colors in response to the cold weather changes, and basically the blood flow being reduced there. And so it can be really painful.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure exactly what your friend's wife is going through, but I imagine the cold weather is not, if it's manifesting like that through her hands, then no telling what the rest of her body is like as well.
You're currently the chief resident in your residency, is that correct?
Yeah, so in my residency, we have a pretty big residency. There's 5 chiefs, but I'm one of the administrative chief residents.
And what are your roles in that position?
So, there's a lot of different responsibilities that come with that. One of my bigger roles was scheduling kind of around this time last year when we were picked for the positions. So basically, we make the schedule for the entire residency. Recruitment is also a big thing. So we're the ones that are kind of at the forefront of residents, recruiting new medical students to come to our program. And then, just day-to-day admin tasks. Someone calls in sick, I find someone to replace them. Making different schedule changes to help people do the things that they want to do, like go to conferences and whatnot. And then the whole COVID pandemic kind of threw a wrench in things as well. So trying to figure out how to work the schedule around, doing COVID ICU shifts and whatnot for us.
I can only imagine how hectic that can be. On top of all your other duties, now you got to deal with COVID. COVID really has threw a monkey wrench in everything, right? Since 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
How many Black chief residents have been in your residency or currently in your residency? Are you the only one?
So, I did ask this question a while back. I'm not really sure how many Black chief residents there have been, but I know of at least 2 others before me. So one was a woman and one was a man who's still on faculty at WashU. Um, so there's at least, I think, 4 Black residents in the current residency, and last year we also had 4, but one of them graduated, so we got one more this year. But yeah, 4 out of 44. But honestly, for a neurology program, that's actually pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
What year is this in your residency? What year are you in?
So I'm in my 4th year of residency, so it's my last year of residency.
Last year, and then you go to the fellowship at Johns Hopkins, correct? Mm-hmm. And what will you be doing there in your fellowship?
So I will be studying multiple sclerosis more, learning how to do clinical trials. So basically, clinical trials are used for, the new medications that will come out to help people with multiple sclerosis. And so you have to study it pretty well before you can actually give it to, the general population. And so I'll be learning how to conduct those studies and, doing things safely, making sure the medications work. And so that's primarily what I'll be doing. But I'll also be seeing patients in clinic as well.
Oh, okay. So you will basically ramp up whatever your duties are now just to another level, so to speak.
Yeah, and specifically in, multiple sclerosis and neuroimmunology.
And how long will you be at Johns Hopkins?
So it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 years. It depends on kind of like how far I get in the 2 years. And then if I figure out that I still need more time, then I can do the 3rd year as well.
And then after the 3rd year, you will be, full blown on the front line, battling MS. That's beautiful. So what do you see yourself like in the future? Like we're talking about after fellowship, we're talking, later on down the line. What do you see yourself in this medical world navigating and battling these conditions?
So right now I feel like I've kind of pigeonholed myself based on my interest into doing academic medicine. That means like being in an academic medical center so that I can, have the resources to do research and focus on specifically multiple sclerosis. And then, when I got into all of this, I was just thinking about like, medical school and doing neurology has helped me learn about all the things that I, didn't quite have the understanding of. And still, like, there's so much to explore. And so I just want to be able to, be a familiar face for people who are not used to seeing, Black neurologists specifically, and then help educate them and heal people in need. So hopefully I can do that through an academic medical center.
Now you're doing it, like you're the inspiration for someone else from, your hometown and your family. Now you can be the example for others, to follow in your footsteps. And, even if they don't want to go into neurology, the fact that you're a doctor and you're Black and you're a woman, I think that alone, you've already surpassed the odds and beat the odds.
Well, that's what we say now, but hopefully like more people will be inspired to, do it and, see it through. Because like, there can be a lot of like discouraging factors for people to actually complete it, like people wanting to start families and things like that. I just made it my priority to say, school is what I'm doing now, so I'm not going to like have any distractions. But yeah, I've definitely seen people have it all though, have like, family and also go through medicine. But I would say, if I were to have like, be married, have a family right now, there will probably be some problems because like you can't work 80 hours a week and be away from your family and then there not be problems.
What would you say was your central motivation throughout your entire journey? I'm talking throughout undergrad, grad school, med school, your residency, and carrying on into your fellowship. What was that central desire that said, you know what, I may be only one of 11 or 10 Black students, but I can't stop. I'm tired. I've been working 80, 90 hours a week, but I can't stop. What would that be if you had to nail it down to one thing?
Well, for me, it's like when I set a goal, I want to see it through. So when I set the goal to, go to medical school and become a doctor, I was not going to stop until I got to my goal. And I'm still not completely at my goal because I'm still in training. So that and then just, seeing the people around me, like, and my siblings who kind of look up to me, it's just like, well, if I quit, then it shows them that it's okay to quit, and I don't want to be that example for them. Just like having like those influences around you, like people are looking up to you. It's just like, okay, well, now I have to pull it together to make sure that I'm the best example that I can be.
If this podcast has benefited you in any way, shape, or form, I ask for two things as always. Number one, leave a 5-star review. And number two, pass it on to a friend who may benefit from it as well. A new episode of Mogul Motivation will be out this Wednesday.